Let's move on to red meat and cancer, okay? So right now we're going to talk about this causation versus correlation piece because that's where this comes from. Red meat causes cancer. This is all causation versus correlation, or correlation versus causation, okay? Now, observational studies or epidemiology cannot prove causation. So when we're looking at correlation versus causation, if it's an observational study, it can't prove causation. This is impossible. It just can't. So if there's a headline that says something causes something, and then the first paragraph says observational study shows, they have discredited themselves right from the jump. This is not a scientific study that you can trust or pull any data from, okay? Yet the media will create these headlines from these studies as if they can prove causation. It's insane. This is 100% incorrect, and it's super irresponsible because it's impossible to prove causation. So they're misleading the public knowingly. Man, now the journalists might not know, but the scientists that are skewing this data absolutely know. So let me give you an example. This example of quote-unquote red meat causes cancer, okay? Now, generally speaking, a study will be testing for just one thing. It could be an epidemiology study, called an observational study. Subjects are literally just surveyed. These are food questionnaires, right? Often asking the patients to recall all the food that they ate as far back as 30 days. What did you have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the last 30 days? Fill out this questionnaire. We just did a scientific study, everybody. Right? It's insane, okay? So now, one of these groups could be heavy meat eaters, and the other group might rarely consume red meat or never consume red meat, right? This seems harmless enough. You have two different groups of people. The problem is, there's a few things to think about here. Now, we've been told for decades, since the 1950s, that red meat and fat are bad for us, right? So, if you think about an average American and picture a heavy meat eater, your brain might automatically picture like a fat guy eating a Big Mac with a large Coke. Yummy. Like Homer Simpson might come to mind, right? Now, when you picture someone who doesn't eat red meat at all, you might picture like a cute little blonde-headed yoga instructor with a size 0 waist who says namaste when she meets you, you know? That's literally what you're going to be picturing. So you see what I'm saying? This is an example of what's called healthy user bias. Now, this means that the subjects who rarely eat meat are probably already pretty health conscious because they're trying to follow mainstream advice from the government and from doctors. They may be more active, so they're not sedentary people. They're probably more selective and purposeful in the foods that they actually do eat. They probably don't drink soda, eat vegetables instead of sugar. They probably don't drink excess alcohol or smoke cigarettes, right? Now, the red meat eaters, these are the people that go against the grain, right? They don't care about mainstream. They don't have any time for their doctor's advice, right? So they're not following mainstream advice, which means they may be less health conscious overall, okay? So are they eating fruit fly? Are they eating a burger with fries every time they consume red meat? Do they smoke cigarettes? Do they regularly drink beer? Do they drink soda? Do they exercise, right? Now, to be clear, I'm not making up this healthy user bias thing because countless studies have actually shown these things. They've shown that people who eat more red meat typically tend to have a higher BMI, they're more likely to be overweight and obese already, they're more likely to smoke cigarettes, they're more likely to be physically inactive, they are far less likely to eat fresh fruits and vegetables, they're actually far less likely to have education beyond a high school education, okay? Now, all of these variables, believe it or not, are actually already associated with higher risk of heart disease and cancer. So it's not possible to isolate red meat as the cause. You can't. Again, causation versus correlation. We also don't know, is all of the red meat in this study, like I talked about at the beginning of the episode, is this red meat pasture-raised and grass-fed? Doubtful, right? None of these variables are controlled for in observational studies. Yet, you may see a headline that says something like, quote, red meat linked to 20% increased risk of cancer, or something like that. Now, they're just willfully deciding that red meat is the cause. It's nonsense, right? So, it would be more accurate to say, quote, red meat possibly associated with an insignificant increased risk of cancer in sedentary individuals who regularly consume refined carbohydrates and sugar, smoke cigarettes, and drink alcohol. End quote. more accurate headline, but that's not a very clickbait headline, is it? It's not going to get the same clicks online. And that's all we're doing in the social media age is paying, okay, this is how clickbait works. These articles use clickbait titles, so you click on them so they can sell ad space on that website for more money. This is literally the concept of clickbait, everybody, and now these studies have fed into clickbait online. So this is absolutely crazy. You cannot cite causation from observational studies, period. There are 0 studies proving causation between red meat and anything bad. Bring me the study that proves that red meat causes cancer definitively, and I'll give you my house. This house. It's quite nice. It's beautiful. I'll leave the whiteboard for you. Bring me that study, and I'll give you my house. Okay? Can't prove causation. It's not going to happen. So that one is off the charts. Okay?